Gabby to drive? So, well, that's sort of what we're talking about today, change and transition. And today in our congregation, we specifically have some transitions to celebrate. Those are those graduating from high school, the change in them and in their parents. Let's be real. Parents have to change with this too. Dawn and Jeannie, our custodian and musician, are going on to new ventures in their ministry. And then as a congregation, we will change. And then in a reality, we all change every day. So we're going to talk about transitions, changes, transformations, alterations, whatever word you can come up with. And the reality is, they say Lutherans don't like change, but that's really not true. No one likes change, especially if it isn't the change that we changed. I mean, you know, we don't like it put upon us. So we're going to talk about transitions and change because it is important, because life really is a series of transitions, is it not? I mean, what are the transitions we have in our own lives that you've experienced in your own lives? Some of the kids said it earlier. It's from crawling to walking. We didn't talk and then we did. And you can't wait until your kids can talk, and then they get to be about 2 and you can't wait for them to know to be quiet. And what are some of the things in life that change? Jobs. Jobs change. Sometimes we want them to change, sometimes not so much. Losing a loved one. Yep, a death. Getting married, having children. Yeah, transitions, I think it's important to note that transitions aren't necessarily good or bad. You know, and sometimes they're a little bit of both, but they require changes in our lives. So marriage, someone earlier said divorce too, that requires a change. What else? Health. Our health changes. The one thing I hate is when the doctor says to me, well, as you get older, I don't know, I want to say, what? That's a silly thing to say, as you get older. So, all right, what changes in the life of a church or of an organization? Staff changes. We know that now. Staff changes. What else changes in the life of an organization or a church? Leadership changes. Yeah. In a church especially, you know, you vote new people in all the time, or, you know, your boss at work could be changed, you know, the head of the council here or whatever could be changed. The people you serve change. Yeah, the reality is church is one of those things where we sort of flow in and flow out. You know, if you're here every week, you'll notice we don't have the same congregation every week. There are different people here, you know, sort of depending on what we go. If you worship here year-round, you know that the winter is different than the summer. So, you know, there's all these changes going on. Barbara DeAngelis said this, that the moment in between what you once were and who you are now becoming is where the dance of life takes place. In between who you once were and who you are now becoming is where the dance of life takes place. So the reality is we are sort of in the midst of everything, and we're sort of having that dance of life, knowing that transitions are coming, sometimes a little faster maybe than we would have liked, but that is what life is. Life is movement, always moving, always changing, and if it stops, that's a bad thing, because that probably means death. All right, so it's important to us to know if we are always in a state of transition as individuals, as a congregation, it's important to know how do we respond then to the transitions of life? How do we respond in our own life as jobs change, as relationships change, in our congregation as staff changes? How do we respond often to transition? How do we respond? Okay, someone said joyfully. So, yep. And we could be happy for people as they're moving on to bigger and better things maybe, okay? So that's taking a positive attitude. How else? Someone said something over here. Okay, afraid. What are we actually afraid of? of what's coming next, which often we don't know, right? It's a fear of the unknown. I know this congregation, those of you who have been here for over 5 years, you know what it's like to not know if you're getting a pastor or not, right? And that anxiety of who will it be, and will anyone ever come, and why don't people like us, or whatever else, you sort of went through. I worked with congregations all the time that were wondering that. Why does everyone keep turning us down? So the unknown is a big fear. And when we're afraid, how do we often act? Okay, withdraw. We just sort of stand back and watch, right? Well, let's just stand back and see what they do about this. Now, who is they? Everybody else, as long as it's not me. And then, once they have made their decision, what are we going to do? We're going to complain and judge it. Yep. So that's a normal response. It's not a good response, but it is normal. Okay? What else? Do we get anxious? What happens when we get anxious because we don't know what's happening? We get scared. And then what happens when we're scared? Do you really listen all that well? Do you really listen? No, your ears sort of shut down. You can only hear what you want to hear, which is usually in your own head. So you don't hear the others. Usually, often when you're anxious, you sort of lose the options that are open to you because there's no option, because this is just bad. There's no options. Nothing is ever going to change this. Nothing is ever going to make it better. So we get very, very anxious. Oftentimes, rumors and gossip start in communities, because we don't know the truth and we're anxious, so we just sort of start making things up. They sound true enough. Okay? Anger. Can we get angry when things change? We can get angry. This wouldn't have happened if, and sometimes we're angry at ourselves for maybe something we did or didn't do. We can blame. One of the biggest challenges, I think, when we get anxious is that we can get real reactive. Sort of like when the doctor puts that hammer to your knee and your foot goes up and you can't control it. That's sort of how we act as an individual. We just sort of start saying things and doing things that's almost out of our control because we are being reactive instead of responsive. And congregations do the same thing. Well, we got to get this position filled, so we're just going to hire somebody. Or, whatever we do, we just got to get something done, so we just do something, even if it's not the right thing or the right time. So we become reactive. As congregations and individuals, we need to know how to respond to transitions in our lives because they're always going to take place. Always going to take place. So, if life is a series of transitions, and today we're celebrating the transitions of our high school graduates, which we have 2 in here today. Meredith's over there, and Nikki's over there, and we have some that graduated last year here. What are some of the transitions that graduates go through? Moving away. Is that a good transition, bad transition? Are you indifferent? I would say it probably depends on the day. Yeah, there are some days that, woohoo, I'm going to be out of their house, So you move away. What other transitions? Having to pay for your own things. The challenge often comes when you move out of the house but think your parents are still going to pay for everything. There are people that think that's going to happen. It doesn't always work that way. Okay? How about parents? What are transitions for you? Not having your kids around as much. Yeah, they got to work or they got to go to school. How many of you put that tracker on your phone so you could track where your kids are? How many of you probably said, or the kids said, and I know this happened in one family, okay, now that I'm in college, that tracker's coming off. You're not going to know where your kids are. And my father said, I can't sleep until you get home at night. Although my father was always snoring when I got home at night. But he was awake, he knew. That's what he always said. The parents don't know when you're there. So you might get these random calls from your parents. Of course, you've got cell phones now, so you can, if you can get away from the party, you can talk to your parents and they'll think you're at home. When I grew up, we only had landlines. So if I didn't answer the phone, where were you at 12 o'clock when I called you? You should have been studying, So parents sort of lose some of the control. The control they thought they had over their kids when they were there. All right, what about for Dawn over here and Jeannie, who are leaving their positions here and moving on somewhere else? What are some of the transitions they will go through? Okay, some fear. How come? Okay, fear of maybe being accepted somewhere else. Dawn, for those of you who don't know, is working at Morley and has been for 4 months. And it's a lot of hours, a lot more than maybe we thought. And so, you know, you might not know what to do with some time. He's like, oh, yes, I will. I will find something to do with that time. But you know what? I will bet that at least on one Wednesday, he will think that he has to rush to get over to church. Because he's done it for at least 4 months and longer when he worked at the hospital. You know, that's going to be different. Is to not have to feel like you got to rush somewhere now. For Jeannie, you know, not worrying about who's going to cover for her if she needs to take care of Mikey or anything like that, you know. Those are some of the good things that are going to happen. But what about relationships? Because it isn't just the work that they did here. It's the relationships we have with people. I mean, you'll note probably later the relationship that Dawn has with the choir. You know, that's going to be a relationship that maybe if it's going to continue, needs to have it tended a little bit more intentionally because they're not going to regularly see each other on Thursday nights and Sunday mornings. So relationships change. What about changes in a congregation? We kind of said them earlier. Staff changes, people come and go. Maybe the needs of the community sort of change how the congregation responds. You know, if we respond the same way we do today as we did in 1950, as if the problems of today are the same of 1950, we're going to miss our mark. And people are going to say, what are they think they're doing? So, all right. So there's a lot of transitions and ways we respond. As a church, we're all about transitions, though. That's who we are. Because as a church, we know that we are always pressing on, moving forward. We know that God created us and God transforms us every day. And we worship, I mean, think about this. We worship the King of transformation. I mean, think about it. Jesus Christ is all about transformation. The exact same thing that most of us don't like. Jesus transforms darkness into light. Jesus transforms us from orphans to being adopted. Jesus transforms us from sinners to saints. Jesus transforms us from captive to free, from lost to found, from dead to alive. Now that's a transformer. But for us, the question is, do you believe? Do you really believe that Jesus transforms? That Jesus transformed things for the good of you, for the good of the community, and the good of the world. Do you believe that Jesus transforms your life? Do you believe that Jesus transforms your life? Do you believe that Jesus transforms the lives of others? Do you believe that Jesus transforms the life of a community? That Jesus transforms the life of the world? Because if we believe that, we have nothing to fear in the transitions of our life. We know that whatever happens, God is going to take hold of that to transform us. Now, it isn't like it's necessarily going to be easy. I can tell you, they call them growing pains for a reason. Growing and changing can be difficult. But God is, through Jesus Christ, is the great transformer. And so I pray that as we face these transitions in our congregation, and this is only a few of them. I mean, we're going to have new transitions tomorrow, probably, hate to tell you. Probably isn't like, okay, check for 2017, no more change. And you're going to have more transitions in your life. Graduates, you're going to hit transitions you couldn't have imagined in your life. That you never saw that coming. And I'll guarantee you, you will get on your phones and you will call your parents and ask them for help. I know you're thinking they won't know anything about this because they're way too old, but, but you will call them nonetheless. Parents, you might call your kids and you may even ask them some questions. That's when things get really crazy, when you start asking them for advice. But I pray that as we move forward, that we will embrace the transitions that are in our lives. And we will respond trusting that God can make great things out of everything. And that we are going to be molded and shaped into who God is creating us to be. That we will sort of dance this life from where we were to who we are meant to be. Amen.